Hello and welcome to today's video. My name is Alicia and on this channel I talk all things luxury, life and fashion, so if you're interested, please stick around. Now, before we start this video, I'm just going to say it's probably going to be a long one, so my recommendation is grab a cup of coffee and a packet of chips because we're going to be here a while. Bubs and I recently spent 12 days in Phuket and I thought I would do a price breakdown for you guys, and then I'm going to add some travel tips at the end as well. Now, if you're anything like me and you spend a lot of time on social media, particularly I see this more on TikTok, you get a lot of people saying you can go to this country for X amount of dollars per day, and it's normally something ridiculously small. Like, I've seen videos where people are like, oh, you can go to Bali for 20 Australian dollars per day. And yes, it probably is possible, but I want to give you guys a more realistic idea of what you would spend in a place like Phuket. This cost breakdown is going to be based on our adventures video. If you haven't watched that, I will link it down in the description down below. If you don't want to watch it, that's fine. I'm going to do a little quick summary of every day anyway, so you guys can still get an idea of the activities and what we got up to. For obvious reasons, I'm going to be using my phone because I was never going to memorize these numbers, but I'm going to start with big ticket items, and these are our flights and our accommodation. So we purchased return tickets with Malaysian Airlines for $2,578.02. This included meals, 20 kilograms checked baggage and a 7 kilogram carry-on baggage. Now, our first hotel is the Patong Bay Hill Resort, where we spent 3 nights, and that was $361.67 booked via Qantas, and this price included a breakfast buffet. We then spent 4 nights at the Marriott Spa and Resort at Merlin Beach, which also included breakfast. Now, we paid at the counter on the day of check-in, and the total bill was 16,800 baht, which is the local currency in Thailand. We paid via a Visa card, and that was converted to $746.56. It's also important to note that that price is a discounted rate because we were attending a wedding that was held at the Marriott. And then finally, we booked an Airbnb for 4 nights, and that was $966.24. Admittedly, more on the expensive side, but we also did book a 2-bedroom villa instead of a 1-bedroom place. That was a choice that we made. The cost of electricity and water at the Airbnb totaled 1,520 baht, which I'm going to explain a little bit later in the video. So that brings us to Sydney International Airport, where we bought Macca's before we boarded a flight, which was $24.55 Australian. I also did shop at Dior, but for obvious reasons, I'm just not going to include that in the total. At Kuala Lumpur, we had dinner and breakfast because we ended up with an overnight layover, which I'm going to admit, first and last time I'm ever doing that. We paid via card for purchases, and it totaled about 60 Australian dollars. That brings us to day 1 in Phuket, which was a half day of kind of getting to the hotel and settling in and getting used to our surroundings. Our transport from the airport to Patong Bay Hill Resort was 1,250 baht, and this was organized through the hotel. That is pretty standard in terms of price because you are looking at about an hour drive from the airport to Patong Beach. We caught up with 3 friends on Bangla Road for dinner and dessert, which was 1,790 baht for the 2 of us. And then we also picked up some alcohol at 7-Eleven, which only totaled 68 baht. Drinking in Thailand was significantly cheaper than I thought it would be. Day 2, we did island hopping, and the price was all inclusive. It was 1,500 baht per person, so 3,000 for Bubs and I. The taxi to our pickup point in the morning was 300 baht. And then after island hopping, we had dinner together, which was 620 baht for the 2 of us. And then we again went to 7-Eleven, picked up some more snacks, and that was 278 baht. We did get a shuttle back to the hotel, so that didn't cost us anything at all. Day 3, we spent on a chartered boat, which was chartered by the groom. We got a taxi scooter to the pickup point, which was 300 baht again. We picked up some food from 7-Eleven for 78 baht before boarding the boat. Once on board, we literally didn't spend any money, and then we got back to Phuket late afternoon just before dinner. We had dinner and drinks for 200 baht. In my adventures video, I said that we were meant to go to Illusion, and most of the group did, but I ended up getting food poisoning, so we actually didn't go, and we went back to the hotel and called it a night. Food poisoning in Thailand is just like a whole nother I don't even know what gave me food poisoning, because I got food poisoning, Bubs didn't, and we ate the exact same stuff, so he's probably just got a stronger stomach than me. Moving on to day 4. Day 4 was hotel change day. We went from Patong Bay Hill Resort to the Marriott. We got a taxi there, and that was 400 baht. After we checked in, we got the Marriott shuttle into town and then got an hour-long massage, which was 200 per person. We had lunch and fruit juices, which was 400 baht for the 2 of us. And then we had dinner at this really cute restaurant at Tri Trang Beach, which was $810, and that also included alcohol. So that was 2 beers and a cocktail, and obviously 2 like full meals. Day 5 was the day of the wedding. We had breakfast at the hotel, which was included, like I mentioned before. We got the shuttle into town, got another massage, which was 200 per person for the hour. We grabbed fruit juices for 150 baht, and then some more stuff at 7-Eleven, which ended up totaling 266 baht. We then came back to the Marriott, and we caught the shuttle. We caught up with some of the other wedding guests who weren't staying at the hotel, and we had lunch together. That was 1,082 baht and 84 cents. No, let me try again. It was 1,082.84 baht, because I don't know what they call their cents. And we ended up settling that via card upon checkout, which converted to $48.23. Day 6, the day after the wedding, we joked about it being a rest and recovery day, but honestly, I think that was probably one of the busier days that we had. We got up at 8:30, had breakfast, went to the pool for a swim, and then decided to go into Patong Beach to go jet skiing. Bubs and I rented one jet ski together for 2,000 baht. I think it was like 35 or 40 minutes or something, because I couldn't drive it. Contacts and salt water are not friends. So I literally just held onto the back of him with my eyes closed for the entire time, essentially. And after that, we had lunch on the beach at this really cute like beachfront restaurant. It was 520 baht for the both of us, and we both got drinks, but I don't think it was alcoholic. Like, I'm pretty sure I got a coconut and he got some like watermelon juice or something. And then for dinner, we decided to go to a seafood place as a group, keeping in mind this was like the last night we were all together in Phuket. So we kind of went all out. Yeah. So while I was getting ready for that, Bubs got a massage at the hotel for 200 baht for 30 minutes. The taxi to the seafood place was split, and it came out to $100 per 100 baht per person. And dinner was actually 2,400 baht for the 2 of us, which I think definitely is on the more expensive side for Phuket. But as someone who consumes a lot of seafood back home, it definitely was worth it, because it was fresh, it was essentially live. If you're not a fan of wet markets, that's not something I would recommend you do. And then we picked up some souvenirs while we were there for 419 baht. Day 7 was unorganized chaos. Yes, unorganized. There was zero organization to it. So day 7 was basically departure day for majority of our group. I think, quite frankly, the only people who stayed at the Marriott that night were Bubs and myself, because we were due to move on the next day. But it was just a day of goodbyes. So in the morning, we went into town, we split a taxi, and Bubs and I paid 100 baht for our share. We got an hour massage for 2, which was 550 baht, and then we spent 700 baht on food and drinks. We spent an additional 1,074 baht on souvenirs, and then a trip back to the hotel was 300 baht. At that point, it was pretty much just Bubs and I. So we went back to Tri Trang Beach, had dinner again at another family restaurant, and that was 420 baht. Day 8 was our move day. We were moving from the Marriott into the Airbnb. After checkout, we went to 7-Eleven, and that was 149 baht. We had lunch near the Marriott. Actually, it was the same restaurant that we had dinner at the night before. and that was 420 baht. We then went back to the Marriott lobby and had drinks for 625 baht before catching a taxi to the Airbnb, which was 1,200 baht. Dinner we ordered via Grab, and that was billed directly to our Australian account, and that was $9.08 AUD. From day 9 on, we didn't really spend much in terms of local currency because all of our delivery was billed directly to our Australian account, and our Airbnb was actually pretty remote. It was really hard to get anywhere without a taxi, and because of how remote it was, you can't flag down a taxi. You actually need to call a number and you need to pre-plan and pre-book things. So we just essentially decided to stay put in the Airbnb. Day 9, we actually didn't leave the Airbnb at all. It was just a full day at the Airbnb, and we spent a total of $26.99 Australian on food, and that covered all 3 meals. Day 10, we went for a little walk to 7-Eleven. There was a 7-Eleven, I think about 20 minutes walk one way from where we were staying. Admittedly, it was uphill, so it wasn't a trip we made often, but we did go to 7-Eleven. We bought lunch, breakfast, snacks, and alcohol, which is 475 baht. Right outside 7-Eleven was this like drink stand, and so I got a Thai milk tea and Bubs got a taro milk tea, which totaled 60 baht, and they were 32 ounces each. We did not finish them. They were 32 ounces each. They were huge. It was literally the size of my head. Then we called in to have a massage service come into the Airbnb, and that was 1,200 baht for the 2 of us for 1 hour. So I will definitely say it is more expensive to get a service to you for obvious reasons, but also, again, the remoteness is something that played into it. Dinner we got from Grab, and that was $9.75 Australian. Day 11 was our last full day in Phuket, and we ordered all 3 meals from Grab, and that was $41.97. We did spend a bit more because we got 4 coconuts, and if you watch my adventures video, we had to butcher them ourselves, and it was not a very well thought through plan, because 4 coconuts sounds great until you have to crack them open. Anyway, day 12 was checkout and departure back home. The taxi to the airport was 350 baht, and at the airport we spent 1,815 baht on gifts and 230 baht on drinks. Now, we're going to do a total summary of what was spent. So we spent a total of 27,637 baht and $4,873.06. So that's the AU amount. It makes for a total of 6,254.91 Australian dollars. The conversion rate that I used for baht was 20 baht to 1 Australian dollar because that was the conversion that we received when we exchanged cash in Sydney. This means that we averaged $260 per person per day. For a little bit of context, we took 40,000 baht with us to Thailand. Obviously didn't use it all, and we ended up returning with 10,940 baht, which I'm still yet to exchange. So that's just quite literally just sitting in a handbag somewhere, and I need to go to a currency exchange and get Australian back for it. Now, moving on to tips. So I'm going to start, the first couple are going to be general travel tips, and then we're going to move into like what I think is like Thailand specific. So if you're traveling across different climates, bring a change of clothes. We left Sydney, it was like 6 degrees in the morning. We got to Phuket and it was like 29 degrees and hot and humid. And so if you just want to be comfortable and you don't want to feel like you're going to have a heat stroke, bring a change of clothes, or the other way around if you're going from like a hot climate to a cold climate. If you have a layover in another country that isn't the destination, for example, we laid over in Malaysia, we didn't really think about the currency. So if you want to be safe, exchange some currency for the airport that you're going to be stopping in. That being said, most airports will let you swipe like a Visa or a MasterCard, but your bank will charge you fees. So something to consider. If you don't mind copying the fees, then that's fine, but it is something that you can consider doing. Number 3 is AirTag your bags. We put AirTags in our 2 checked Bags, originally I was a little bit like, maybe I won't, like what could possibly go wrong? And then the groom's suitcase got misrouted. And so I definitely put AirTags in there. You can get them in a 4-pack from Apple, and it's just that like peace of mind that even at least if you do lose it, you know where it's gone. Now, when it comes to currency exchange, there's 2 options. You can do what Bubs and I did, which was exchange a huge amount in your home country at once, or if you want to get a slightly better rate, and I think this is a bit more applicable to like AUD and USD because they're considered more valuable in some countries, exchange a small amount, enough to get you through like 1 or 2 days in your destination country, and then try and find an exchange currency where you are visiting, and they can generally give you a better rate. I think some of our friends did that and they were getting like 23 baht to the Australian dollar. So they get 3 baht more per dollar or 300 baht more per $100 that they exchange. We didn't want to do that because, one, we didn't want to walk around with this huge amount of Australian cash. And because Bubs and I, this is the first time that we travel internationally together, we didn't want to have to worry about getting scammed or anything. So we just took the safer route and we just exchanged it all in Australia before we left. Now, moving on to a bit more Thailand specific, when to bargain and when not to bargain. Now, a lot of Asian countries, not just Thailand, a lot of Asian countries, they expect tourists to barter or to bargain when it comes to prices. Now, there's always going to be times when that is considered acceptable, and there are going to be times where it's a no-go. So markets are appropriate, restaurants and malls are not. Wet markets, if you choose to go, are appropriate, and I think that the appropriate is more like when you're buying in larger quantities. Experiences are appropriate as well. For example, the island hopping tour we did, we paid 1,500 baht per person, but originally they were asking for 3,500. That probably is an outlier situation because there was no number offered in between 3,500 and 1,500. A friend of ours booked it and literally was like, oh, you can do a better price than that, and he just went straight down to 1,500. So little bit of an outlier situation. But if you are someone who is comfortable or confident with bargaining, then I would probably recommend it because you can save some money. Be prepared to see some wild things. Coming from Australia, which is a country that is so heavily regulated by laws and standards, there's so much that we observed that was just crazy to us. Like, for example, we would see like a ute towing like 4 or 5 jet skis at once, which you're never going to see in Australia. Like, the telephone poles would have like 1 million wires, and we literally joked, we were like, we don't think they fix problems. Like, if there's an issue with those like overhead wires, I'm pretty sure they just stick a new one on there. And I think it's okay, in my opinion, to make these observations if you keep in mind that what you are witnessing is their norm. This is something that they've grown up seeing. They've probably grown up watching their parents, their grandparents do. So as long as you acknowledge that what seems crazy to you is normal to them, it's okay to make observations. Because I think these people do know that, you know, their tourists are coming from extremely westernized societies, and there are going to be things they do that are a little bit crazy and a little bit out there that our government would never like sign off on. Not all restaurants are on the map. And I think this is, apparently I was told that Google Maps has improved in Thailand in the last couple of years, but it used to be horrific. But the best restaurants are not always on the map. So the restaurants that we went to near our hotel at the Marriott, we found because we went for a walk, they were not on the map. In fact, one of the restaurants that we went to was listed as a car park on Google Maps, and we went back there like 3 times while we were at the Marriott. So a lot of the times it's the family style restaurants that aren't on the map, and that's probably a reason why, because they live and they work out of the same house. But always go for a walk. Obviously, be safe, be kind of conscious. I personally, if I was traveling alone, I may not walk somewhere that is completely uncharted by myself at night. Take safety precautions, but consider it as something to do when you first check into a hotel. Bangalore Road is a very, very popular street. It is pretty much like the main tourist attraction in Phuket. but it can be very intense at night. And what I mean by this is like, people just grab you left, right, and center. It's a huge part of the hustle culture in Phuket, but they will literally just shove pamphlets in your face. They'll try and sell you things, whether it's a restaurant meal or a bar experience or a show. They will literally try and sell you anything, and you have to have your wits about you. Don't grab anything. If they like try and pass you things, don't hold them. We found like safety in numbers. As you travel in larger groups, they tend to only harass the ones at the front, and I'm a bit of a straggler. So when we went down Bangla Road in big groups, we didn't have as many issues. Bangla Road during the day is a very different experience. It's very laid back. It's much more laid back. There's a lot less hustle because most of these people wouldn't have left until like 4 a.m. in the morning. And Bangla Road is actually open to vehicles during the day. So it's a very different experience. I would recommend you do both. If you were going out as a family, I recommend the morning and probably not the evening, especially if you have young children. There's just a lot of things that they could potentially be exposed to on Bangla Road that you might not want young children exposed to. So I've mentioned a lot about hotel shuttles, and hotel shuttles are actually really, really useful. So we didn't know, but the first two hotels that the only two hotels that we stayed at had shuttles. The one at Patong Bay Beach was free, like every single shuttle was free. Marriott do it a little bit differently. They have like free shuttles in the morning going from the hotel to the beach, and then after a certain point you have to pay per person, but any service coming back from the beach to the hotel is complimentary. Now, I'm not saying book a hotel because it has a shuttle, but all I'm saying is look into it. If you are picking between 2 or 3 options and one of them has a shuttle, it might be something you want to consider, because you're generally saving about 300 baht on a one-way trip, because most taxis will start at 300 baht regardless of how close your end destination is. Drinking water in Thailand is not safe. Water that you consume needs to be bottled water. Do not drink it out of the tap. Some hotels will provide X amount of complimentary bottles a day. So Patong Bay Hill will provide you 2 bottles complimentary per day, and that's on a one bottle per person basis. The Marriott will provide you an unlimited number of bottles per day, and if you are going to Phuket, I would recommend even like brushing your teeth, use bottled water. Like, you don't really want to risk the accidentally ingesting it, because you could get very sick. Like, the water is it is nowhere near close to being able for consumption straight out of the tap. Like, no, don't do it. Not worth it. Transport around Phuket and Thailand in general. Actually, no, this is a bit more Phuket. Phuket, tuk-tuks are the main form of transport. Like I said before, they generally start at 300 baht. You will rarely find someone who's willing to take you for any less than that. They're everywhere, so they're really easy to flag down. And sometimes, because you are tourists, there are going to be certain drivers that try and take advantage of that. They're going to try and inflate the prices. And even with negotiations, they're not really going to be willing to come down. If you are on the main strip, literally not worth it. Go find another driver and see if you can just start right off the bat again with bartering on prices. Sometimes it's not worth the hassle just to go through all of that. So if you find that you go up to someone, for example, and you're trying to get a tuk-tuk from Bangla Road back to your hotel, and it normally costs you 300 baht, and someone says 600, you might just go find another taxi driver, because it's not worth it. Do try and get small notes. And what I mean by this is, if you come from, like, when we exchanged in Australia, they just gave us like pretty much $1,000 and $500 notes. We didn't get anything smaller than that. And because of that, you know, you're going to go to certain places where they're only going to charge you like 100 baht for something, and you don't want to pull out $1,000 note. So what we did was try and exchange like notes in places that were trusted. So for example, we'd go to 7-Eleven and we'd buy like 100 baht worth of stuff, and we just give them 1,000 baht note, because then they would break it, and it's a 7-Eleven. It's not, you know, some corner store on the side of the road. It's going to be okay. So that's something that you should consider doing. And I know for a lot of people it's a huge bargaining tool, because if you have smaller notes, they don't know. I mean, they probably know you have more money, but they can't physically see it because you're not pulling out thousands. I previously mentioned that there was a separate cost for water and electricity at the Airbnb. Now, This is more common in your more rural or your more secluded areas, but you have to keep in mind that a lot of local residents themselves don't have the privilege of running water and electricity. So the further you move away from the big cities, the harder it is to get those lines of water running and get the overhead electricity. So you generally are going to be charged for it. Now, they should list it in the Airbnb, which it was listed in our Airbnb. So I knew right off the bat we were paying independently for water and electricity. But if you are not 100% sure, I would probably suggest you just message the host and ask whether water and electricity is included in the price. What I'm going to say next applies to 7-Eleven and bottle shops and not restaurants and bars. So there are periods during the day where you cannot actually buy alcohol. So this is alcohol is only sold between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. and then from 5 p.m. to midnight. Now, I did a quick Google, and obviously I don't know if this is correct because it's Google, but apparently this is done to reduce the risk of high school students purchasing alcohol. Now, the drinking age in Thailand is 20, but from what I've seen, it's not really heavily enforced, or at least among tourists, it's not heavily enforced. But this is something that you need to keep in mind if you are going to go to a 7-Eleven or to a bottle shop to purchase alcohol, because they will not make exceptions even if you can prove that you are over 20 years old, or even if you very evidently look like a tourist. They don't sway on that rule at all. So just plan if you are going to purchase so that you don't end up going to a bottle shop and leaving empty-handed. I'm going to touch on this subject because I think a lot of people don't talk about it. I come from a tourism background, which is what I studied in university, and I'm just going to say that sex tourism is a huge part of Thailand's economy. So in 2010, the sex tourism industry made up 10% of Thailand's GDP. Now, that may seem like a small number to some of you, but if you live in Australia, the agriculture industry only contributes 2.31% to the Australian GDP, and those numbers for the Australian agriculture industry are based off 2018. So we're talking about a country that hasn't produced any statistics in 7 years almost, and the sex tourism industry is an industry that is growing very, very rapidly, particularly in Asian countries. That being said, your exposure and your interactions with that particular industry will depend very heavily on who you are as a person and who you're traveling with. So let me explain this. If you are generally traveling as a couple, Bubs and I, at no point while we were in Phuket did we have to deal with that industry. But some of the guys that we traveled with who were traveling alone did. So that it is very set to the gender. If you're traveling as a family, you will probably have almost no exposure to it at all. Obviously, you will probably see certain things that indicate it when you walk past shop fronts or things like that, but you will never actually directly interact with the people that are part of that industry. So it is something to prepare yourself for. Bubs and I, we did watch and see some of it, and it's a very pushy industry in Thailand. It's just something that you need to be aware of, and I think a lot of people don't touch on that industry because unfortunately for a lot of these women, it is their way of survival. And my final tip, learn some Thai words. I'm literally just referring to learning how to say hello or good morning or thank you. And this has nothing to do with you being able to communicate better with the people, but it's the fact that when you do say these words, you can see their face light up. They interact with so many international tourists on a day-to-day basis. And because they are, a tourist hub, obviously they all speak a decent amount of English. They can speak enough to kind of communicate with tourists, but it's just a little bit of common courtesy just to say thank you. I'm not saying, you need to go learn the entire Thai language, but just a couple words. And they're always so happy, especially when you go to the family restaurants. When you go to the little cute family restaurants, the vibes are also immaculate. But when you say thank you or when you say hello in Thai, it's just this smile on their face. It's so hard to explain, but if you do it, you will understand what I mean. So that is it for today's video. It was definitely a long one, so I hope you enjoyed that cup of coffee. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them down below in the comments and I will try my best to answer them. Otherwise, I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching and enjoy the rest of your day wherever you are. Bye!